You're listening to the world's smartest podcast network.
Welcome back to our Season 2 finale of Majoring in Everything. I am Gerrit Jones-Rooy. Thank you so much for being here. Our Season 2 finale guest, can I say it one more time? It's our Season 2 finale. Our guest is the one and only brother that I have, and also the one and only Gerrit Jones-Rooy. Welcome to the show, Gerrit.
Hey. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for doing the show. Now, you're on this show not just because you're my brother, and I think you're cool, but also because you, lo and behold, do more than one seemingly unrelated thing. Is this not the case?
I believe it is, yeah.
Very good. All right,
yeah.
So we can, nearer to the end of the show, we can speculate on what it was that our parents did to us that made us unable to commit to anything.
Yeah, no, is this a podcast to explain to our parents why they don't have grandchildren?
It might be, all right? Let's put that in the trailer, note to self. That's perfect. So we're probably going to end up there.
Okay.
I think, or we might not even need to say it. It just might become very obvious.
These people just sprint around constantly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's. Thank God they don't have children. That's the key. I have a basil plant that's dying because I bought it thinking it was it's cheaper than buying basil, but you have to water it anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Focus. So Gerrit. So I think of three main pursuits when I think of the sorts of activities that you get up to. And tell me if I am characterizing this accurately for our listeners. So number one, you are a literacy and teaching expert. You've been a classroom teacher for a very, very long time in different parts of the country. And you work as a professional development coach, teacher to other teachers, to teach them how to be better teachers, particularly with respect to reading. And you do a lot of cool stuff with reading, like historical texts and speeches and things like that. Good so far?
Yeah, accurate. I mean, that's actually why you're seeing me in a hotel room, is because I'm in central Jersey right now, where I'm working with a school district. And I'm doing, right now anyway, demonstration lessons for teachers, so they can hopefully learn new approaches. So we chat with kids about their books, we do conferring, we do novel study, just whatever teachers are really needing to spice up in their repertoire of things that they do. I show them how to do it by modeling, and then we set up things so they can practice it on their own without me later.
What is conferring? I mean, I know what the word...
Yeah, so that's like one of the big tools in the tool belt of literacy work that I do. So conferring is one of the many, but... specifically, it's like if you have kids who are in your classroom reading independent books that they've chosen from the library or from your classroom library, we want to support them by giving them challenging things that they can think about. But kids have different books, and it's possible and probable that the teacher hasn't read all of those books. So how do we set up kids to be thinking about specific things and challenging themselves to think about even harder, more interesting things? When we haven't had a chance to read all the books ourselves. So it's circulating around the room, talking to kids about books, making them love reading a little bit more.
Okay. So, and not relying on sitting in the corner during lunch break and being like, why didn't I ever read Little House on the Prairie?
200 books to read, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What age group are we working with here?
In Jersey, I'm working with middle school. But I specialize in middle school and do some high school work as well. Most recently, I was a high school teacher and director of literacy for 5 schools in New Orleans, where we do some of that, but it's admittedly more on the side of, whole class texts and getting really nerdy about those.
Why middle school? Isn't that a really rough time for kids, or is that why middle school?
To my surprise, that's honestly why middle school. When I became a teacher, I was essentially like, give me anything except for middle school, and they plopped me, sure enough, straight into a middle school classroom. And to my surprise, I wound up really liking it. They are hectic, emotional roller coastery messes, and it's just delightful. It's like
I feel like that says a lot about both the strength of your character and your own problems. But
well, you do. Oh, totally. Yeah. I'm working through my own stuff from 6th grade. Yeah, vicariously through them. No, it's just you'll have in the same classroom some kids who are basically children and just the most innocent, adorable kids, and then other kids who might as well be college students and understand sarcasm and just have a completely different sense of humor. And you've got to be able to, connect with all of them on different levels. And it's a delightful challenge for sure.
And this is still like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade basically is middle school? Because I know it's different in different states.
So Louisiana is where I taught, and I taught mostly older kids. So like kids who had been held back or went elsewhere during Hurricane Katrina and came back. So we're a couple of years behind, but I taught 5th grade in New Orleans. So in Louisiana, it's 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Our middle school here, it's 6, 7, 8. And usually it's 6, 7, and 8.
Okay. No, I read something didn't read it. I heard something on NPR about 1,000,000 years ago that said that the experiences and memories that you have when you're like 10, 11, 12 really stand out in your mind. And basically it was like, why do we all remember our middle school years, our kind of preteen years so well? And basically they were like, it's when you're old enough to start to have your own personality and see where you fit in the world, as opposed to just being like reactive children.
Man, I would love to read that. That tracks with my experience too. So yeah, this sounds right.
All right, great. Well, we'll do ongoing deep dives into our own middle school memories as well. I think those were the only years that you and I were not in school at the same time, because we were 3 years apart in school.
I was in 5th grade and you were in 8th, and then you sprinted off to high school.
I got out of there.
Just as I arrived. Yeah,
I was like,
wise of you. Yeah.
There's only room for one Jones-Rooy in West Frederick Middle School. So that's what's going on there. All right. So you're a teacher, literary expert. And let me also add that you travel all over the world and do this. You've done it across Asia, the Middle East, everywhere in the world. So it's not just reading in United States curricula.
Yeah. Most of the work's in the U.S., but I started doing a little bit of work abroad, and it wound up just being fascinating. And so I've expanded, and I'm doing that a little bit more now. Yeah.
You're also one of the few people I know who's actually been to Saudi Arabia, I believe.
Yeah. So we were brought there for a reading and writing project. So they were trying to. They had this initiative where they were trying to really improve the way they communicate in English, be that not just being able to speak to native speakers, but to like write stories and write argumentative essays and write magazines and just communicate in different ways. So it was really a delightful time. I didn't quite know what to expect. And so we wound up working with 6th grade teachers exclusively. I worked with 100 male teachers from across the country, and a colleague of mine who's a female worked with 100 female teachers. We never met, never interacted, because Saudi Arabia has some strict rules about that, I learned.
So I hear, yeah. You like wander over, and then we never hear from you again. You just go to say hi to your colleague. Oh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did. I got off the plane, I went to shake somebody's hand, and that was a big no-no.
Right.
But it was a fascinating project. The teachers actually were on the female side of things, it's a high status position to be a teacher. So some of the work that
like?
students were producing were really incredible amounts of growth as a teaching profession. On the male side, similarly amazing people, delightful people, talented people, but it is not as high a status job. And in fact, a lot of the male teachers also had other jobs, so weren't always quite as focused and deliberate as the female teachers were. And as a result, the progress went a little slower in terms of student improvement. So we showed all the male teachers the work of the female students, and they were blown away. They didn't believe it, thought I forged it. So it's just an interesting little thing you pick up when you work internationally. These little differences in all these places.
I mean, that sounds like a big difference. Yeah. That's interesting. When you said they were high status, I figured it was high status just as a job in Saudi Arabia, but it's high status for women, not so much for men. Yeah. I mean, we have versions of that in the United States where different professions, you think of like nurses and even teaching probably. Yeah.
Heightened. Yeah.
Right. But totally heightened. All right. So in addition to all of that, so we can come back to the teaching because I have some questions about how you got into it, where you're going with that. But some of the other things that you're up to. So number 2 is you are one of the fiercest advocates for climate change and replanting, or maybe just planting, trees and bringing, saving the earth. Let's put it that way. So that is something that's a huge part of your life. You have Greater Green New Orleans, which is an awesome Instagram account where you're documenting some of the activities of turning the city from gray to green. I got that. And I think every time I turn around, you're like, oh, I was planting trees here or there, and or listening to podcasts about climate and getting upset.
That is key and perhaps the driver of most of the action. I just kind of took it up as a pandemic hobby originally. New Orleans obviously is where my home is and where a lot of people that I love reside, and we've got all the issues that people already know about. One, overheating. Two, flooding. And on top of that, actually, because New Orleans is so heavily concreted, not only does that reflect heat back up, making it even hotter, it also is increasing the rate at which the soil is compacting, and we're getting lower and lower and lower. And we need to do things about it over time.
Oh, that hurts.
So, we need definitely more than rewilding and planting a lot, but we do
That's the word. Rewilding.
That's my favorite word. Yep.
Yeah.
We do need to plant a lot. We do need to recreen with native species. It's one thing that helps with biodiversity, a thing that helps with flooding, a thing that helps with climate change, a thing that catches water before it even hits the ground, preventing flooding from starting, not just at the root soaking up water level, but stopping it from getting there in the first place. And I forget what I just made with that list as I dove into that.
It's a great list. Yeah.
It helps a lot of things that are all related to this. So it feels like a thing we should do a lot more of.
And it started, if I remember this during the pandemic, because we were all, doing Zooms and family chats and that sort of thing. And it started with your driveway, right? It went from like slab of concrete to gravel or something.
There's all these little grants out there for little projects that you can do at your house that really, try to encourage people to do things. The problem is that nobody knows about them. So I don't know how I happened across it. I think I just saw somebody's very beautiful yard and recognized some of the plants. And they had a little sign that said FYI, Front Yard Initiative. And so I looked it up, and it basically is they will reimburse you to remove concrete from your property. So I had this very narrow driveway on my house that honestly I couldn't even fit in incredibly well anyway. And it basically, I paid a guy $1,200 to come in and dig up all the concrete. And I got a reimbursement for the entire amount. You just have to be patient for the check to come later.
Sure.
And then I turned it into a native plant garden, and it's filled with just trees and flowers and plants that will soak up a lot of water, but also like survive the heat stress in the summer because they're from New Orleans and they're used to the climate there. And it has been just an incredibly fun thing to do during the pandemic. Yeah.
Well, I remember you got super into it, and I know your friends have commented on this as well. Your plant fountains. I feel like I've heard some of your friends post things on the internet where they're like, "I love this almost as much as Gerrit loves turning fountains into plants," or whatever. So
I don't know where I got the inspiration, but there's an antique shop near my house, and they've got these huge fountains that I think are intended to go into pools. So you can attach a motor and they'll like spout water up. But it also means that like water drains out of it. So it's got some holes in the bottom of it. So I was just thinking like, hey, I would absolutely, I think this could be a great spot to plant some things. And so I drilled a bunch of holes in the bottom. This thing is 7 feet tall, by the way. It's like 550 pounds. I had to like shuffle it myself. Like that's how I stayed in shape during the pandemic, moving this
thing around. You're like, I want to take all the concrete out of the driveway, but then I want to bring it in the shape of a fountain.
I can't believe I didn't herniate a disc in this whole thing. But it's spray painted yellow. It's a pride and joy little beautiful thing I got in my yard now.
No, it's great. And we'll post links to your various Instagram accounts. It's well worth looking at. I will say that when it was all going on, you were so into it. I mean, it was the pandemic. We were all losing our minds, but you were so into it that I remember even, maybe this is oversharing, but I was speaking with my therapist and I was like, I'm a little worried about my brother. He's been gardening a lot. He's building a planter out of a fountain. You can't seem to stop. And my therapist, who normally is like very good about going, oh, I can see why you'd be concerned. Like, she was like, that sounds kind of nice. It's like, yeah.
I mean, I won't lie.
maybe.
There were moments where I was like, am I too into this? Is this a problem? But I mean, if the alternative was like doom scrolling, then I'm very pleased. You know, of all the bad the habits you can have, like I'm thrilled. Mine seems to be plants. So
I mean, and this is part of the sort of the majoring in everything ethos is exploring the different ways that we get into lots of different things. And some ways can mean, oh, I do a little bit of this here and there. And other formats of this are, I'm going to do this one thing to the maximum for a while because that's what I'm interested in. And then I'll move on to something else. But you're also a great example. I mean, we're talking about this, like, oh, it's fun. You redid your house and you did these things. But it's not just where you live. And you're a great example, I think, and a great reminder to me, at least, of things that we can do as individuals to help address climate change. And I don't mean to let corporations off the hook, get governments off the hook, whatever. But I look at the things that you're doing and then I think, well, I haven't done, maybe I recycle something. Well, I recycle pretty regularly, but thank you so much. Hold your applause.
You did it.
but so we're fine. But don't worry, I got this. But I'm pretty sure all the recycling in New York City just goes into the trash anyway. And anyway, that's not going to be enough. But you are like actually doing things about these problems, which is inspiring to me and hopefully to others.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make the angst like go away, but I can at least feel some like ownership of it. And just my philosophy with it has been, like every millionth of a degree matters in this stuff. So I'm at least, I'm choosing to be a little more optimistic about this stuff lately. Trying to be anyway. But at the very least, if nothing goes right, I want to know that I did what I could. So, and honestly, like I've talked to so many people about it. It seems to be like spreading, like people are into it. And, they're like, oh, I love what you did with your garden. Like, oh, contact Front Yard Initiative. And I know 2 other people who have done it. So I think there's something about just, I don't know, pollinating
there we
these
go.
ideas. If you do something, it seems to pick up, and that's given me a little more hope and a little less angst. So doing something is the right direction.
Any hope and less angst in any context is welcome. And I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine that the Front Yard Initiative versions of that must be all over the country, that people, or even all over the world, depending on where people are listening. We have a big global listenership. So
in the recent that bipartisan infrastructure bill, there were things like that in various places for states. Just hopefully your state did something with it. In the Inflation Reduction Act, there were other things supporting like tree planting. So there are for sure things out there for just about everybody to find. So yeah, it's out there.
All right. Well, I'm going to segue into your third major area that I think of, which is, and it's related because you did this raising money for oceans, I believe. Which is you recently ran the New York City Marathon. It was amazing to see. Congratulations.
Thank you for being there. I felt very supported. You even brought my dog. You brought my dog. That was great.
Yes. And we all decided that your dog must have been extremely confused by the entire exercise.
You wonder where your human is, and then you see him sprint up to you, cheer wildly, and then sprint away.
And you don't see him again for a week.
I honestly, for the next mile, I was really stressed about that.
We should have just let her run alongside you. I don't know what we were thinking. Is that allowed? I don't know.
People would have loved it. Whatever.
They would have. So you ran the New York City Marathon, super impressive, and you're a triathlete and Ironman competitor and all these things. So you've always, to me, I've known you for some time now, been very athletic as well, right? Growing up, soccer, track, wrestling, like where does the marathon, these extreme tough mutters right now, I'm just listing things that I can think of that you did. Where does the physical side of all of this, how does this fit into your life?
I don't know. It's always kind of been honestly, it's shifted. It has shifted in recent years. But at its origin, these 3 things, teaching, tree planting, being outside and seeing how fast I can sprint up a hill. That's true. I did that and still do that.
I feel like I can picture that vividly.
I think for a while it was like a way to blow off steam. It was like a version of play of mine is like, let's climb up this thing and see how fast we can go. And it is both just like a joyful thing. And honestly, there was a long stretch there where teaching, although I loved it, and I love the kids, and it comes very naturally to me to be with kids, I was kind of looking at it as more of like a grind. Like, you have to get through this. Kids need this, and almost like too much in the line of like martyrdom, and not in the line of like, hey, connect with these human beings and learn together, that it should be. And my way of balancing it out was like, I'm gonna sign up for a triathlon at the end of the year, and that way I'll have like a personal thing to like hold on to and a thing to plan for. And it was kind of a release for me. Lately, it has shifted as my views around teaching have shifted, and it's much more, man, this is so fun. Like, I get to show up in a city maybe I don't know that well, or I'm going back to a city that I love, and with friends, ideally, we're all like planning around this, and I get to go and just see how fast I can go, and it's just it's fun, it's just fun. I'm there for fun now. And ditto on like the tree planting. Like, I don't actually know. Like, I didn't plant trees. I planted trees my entire childhood until I was like 10. If you remember that, our front yard is littered with trees.
That's true. Like, you would like literally you'd bury acorns around the yard and things like that,
yeah,
right?
I didn't know much about it, so I put them all like hundreds of acorns in the same spot because I was like 7.
Yeah. No, we do have some randomly located trees. Well done.
We have a lot of randomly located trees. And there would be a lot more if Dad hadn't accidentally run over them with the lawnmower.
Here it goes. Here we go.
So I don't know. I think there's something to like the nurturing side of me around like why I like being a teacher and working with people and planting trees. Like there's some connection in there for me, Yeah. So that's to me, I think, how they intersect with each other.
Right. No, I like that. So two thoughts. The first, simply to say that as you described the let's see how fast I can go, all I can think about is a very vivid memory of me being in like, I was probably 11 and you were maybe 9. I'm not sure. But I was in the house and our mother starts screaming like, Gerrit, stop. And you were just sitting we live on a big hill. And you were just sitting on top of a skateboard, crouched on it, and like going down the hill, I think, to see how fast you could go. And the hill ends in a lake.
Oh, I have scars from that very moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's like he does have a bit of a need for speed, I'll say that.
Going fast is fun. I don't know what to tell you.
There you go. And my miserable instinct is to be like, oh, it's a kind of masochism to do these sorts of things, but it's also super fun. And I actually feel the same way about circus, is that a lot of it can really be hard and painful, but it's super fun because you're just like, look at these weird things I'm doing. Like, you can't.
I mean, the second you said like, oh, I worry that's some masochism, I was just like, I think I'd seen you like lie down on a bed of nails and eat fire.
It feels great. It actually feels great. It feels really good.
Pot meet kettle,
Yeah. I was like, God, I can't believe he would just put himself through all that agony. But insert grandchildren references here. But my second thought is something that I'm so glad that you brought up, which is when I think about people who do more than one thing, and I'm trying to like form these ideas in real time during this podcast, it's common to hear, our dad used to always say this. He would say, work hard, play hard, right? A lot of people say that. And the idea is that like you work really hard in your job, and then, you let off steam, or you like, you go to a what is it? I can't look at my fist. Like a boxing ring. This is not what I'm talking. Kickboxing, or like you go like somewhere to a gym. Working out. Yeah.
I'm with you.
I'm a Peloton instructor. Thank you. You go. So there's this. It's a balance, right? And so people who are extreme runners or bikers or whatever, it's because you're like a high-powered lawyer and you're blowing off steam. And in your case, it was you're in the grind working with these kids. The kids need as much help, and you're the martyrdom that you described, and then you blow it up. But maybe we can do more than one thing and not have it necessarily be a survival thing. Yes. Both can be playful or fun, as you described.
Yes. And I think I kind of try to not to do the regrets thing, but if I could go back in time and have a conversation with my future self, I would have encouraged that a little earlier. And it's interesting because like I'm doing the same stuff. it's just entirely about, to me, how you orient yourself to that thing. Like I said, like martyrdom around teaching is a problematic attitude to have. You are there to connect and inspire joy and make kids realize all the things that they will love and haven't quite realized that they will love, and get really interested in stuff. And if it's a grind, you wind up in the end being worse at both of those things. If you are punishing yourself out there because you want to go a little bit faster, I don't know if you remember this, but I was actually having a lot of issues with like blood pressure for a while. Like for 10 years, I had like blood pressure struggles, which shouldn't be the case for somebody who seems otherwise healthy. And I don't anymore. And I'm convinced it's about that attitude. It's fun. It's all fun. So.
Wow. So you sound very well adjusted, and I feel like I'm wondering what's the secret, because I don't know that I'm there yet. I think I have a lot to learn from, make it more fun, make it more playful. What got you out of that place of this is a grind, this is something that I have to like really clench my teeth and work hard at, and into this mindset? And when did it happen? And where was it? The planters? What happened?
Well, I'm going to run the risk of sounding very therapy-ish.
Let's go. Here we go.
So,
Yep.
It's something along the lines of like the biggest indicator of how your life is going is the voice that no one hears. There's more, so I'm going to find it. But it basically is just like the way you talk to yourself is incredibly important. And you can't change these things overnight. And I definitely still struggle with it. You see my hotel room. I'm currently, stuck in a hotel for 17 days on this project that, I intended to space out. And so it's been a little tough, but over time I've just gotten gradually better, I think, at remembering just like, hey, pay attention to the way you're talking to yourself. Like, are you walking out of a professional development that you gave saying like, oh man, I wish that I had handled this one-on-one conversation differently? Or are you noticing the 5 people who said their minds were blown by a new idea and they can't wait to try it? And it really takes effort for me to remember those things. And honestly, sometimes I leave the room and I kind of repeat it to myself, knowing that I'm working on this thing. But it all happened from this podcast, and it talked about basically a mentality coach who works with Olympians, and told the story of an athlete who was doing what I was doing, which is like, you can go faster, dig harder, like don't wimp out here, like all guts, all glory. And instead, this Olympian who wound up winning a silver medal, but wasn't ranked 2. Went from like dreading this event that he got placed into, and to like, you know what? I love this. And this final Olympics that I'm going to do is going to be a tribute to what this sport has provided for me. Wow. And the Olympian was just remarking on like what a change that was. He was a speed skater. And he was just like, why can't I? It doesn't seem like I'm going to get gold. I hate this. I hate that, what have I done? This has been a waste of my life. But when he thought about that for a really long time and worked on it, it wound up being that he just changed his whole perspective around it. This has brought me so much. And, I can think about that in teaching. I don't love being in this hotel room right now, for example. Like, it's too long away from my dog right now. But it's pretty incredible. If I look back on like the kids that I've gotten to meet and the teachers I've gotten to meet all over the place, it's allowed me to travel. It's allowed me to learn from a ton of different people. And it takes some effort to remember it, but the more you work on it, I think, anyway, for me, it becomes easier.
Yeah, I was going to say,
you get better at it. Yeah.
I mean, thank you for sharing all that. And if you're able to, I'd love to get the name of the podcast. We can put it in the show notes link if other people want to listen to it.
Yeah, well, so I think it's a doctor of psychiatry or psychology, but he was a guest on a podcast. So I think it's on the Tim Ferriss podcast, but I can find it for you. But it was really great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, that's Sounds huge. But it also is admirable that you're able to practice that, because it's, much easier said than done to change the internal thoughts and dialogue you have with yourself. And, just observationally and based on our conversations, I know it's something you've been working on for a while, but it sounds like it's starting to, or maybe already on its way to landing, which is very cool. Well done.
Thank you. And the more I could stress, it's not like, here's how my mentality changed forever. It's definitely not that. Like, it is still, it's something I'm aware of, which means it's not permanent, and I have to keep thinking about it. But it is so much better than the opposite way. So
how do you, there might not be an answer to this, but how do you combat, so if you're leaving the day of professional development and you're reminding yourself all the wins you had in the day and the great things that people have shared with you in terms of what they gained from you, but the negative voice comes in, how do you say, like, thank you, but no? Do you fight it? Do you ignore it? Do you just raise the volume on the good voices? Like, literally tell me what to do.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is helpful, but I'll tell you about a failure I had recently.
Okay.
And to basically illuminate what I could have done in that moment. And I think, I've done a better job since then. So I work with a school district in upstate New York, and I've really had an incredible time with them. I had one teacher who, honestly, like, I'm choosing not to begrudge the teacher. The teacher brought a lot of, like, rude, I don't need to improve my learning energy to it. And really the mentality that I try to have is that this is true of humans, kids, teachers, anybody. I think that oftentimes people are defensive. People are scared. People are putting up that front because they are not ready to reveal this deep insecurity that they might have. However, the way I read it in the moment was, I soldiered on and we continued, but I walked away thinking my whole 3 days with this district were ruined because of the 2.5 hours I spent with this one person who really kind of poisoned the atmosphere a little bit for the 6 people who were there that day, and made me forget about the 30 other teachers that I worked with. And honestly, it wasn't even that bad with the other 5. So I walked out of there furious, so mad at myself. And the inner voice of negativity really kicked in, and it lingered there for a while. And I'll tell you what did not work, which was I'm going to ignore it, or I'm going to argue with it, or I'm going to swipe around on my phone so that I'm, desensitized by looking at so many other things I can't even think about that. And what that caused is honestly me waking up at 3 a.m. to obsess over it, and just like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this a little bit better. I think what I really should have done is, like, in the moment, like, written down on a piece of paper, like, what was in my control there? What would I do differently? And honestly, the answer was I wouldn't have handled that any differently. I'm going to carry a little more information ahead of time about, hey, how can I, knowing what I know about this teacher's fear and defensiveness, how can I connect with this person in a way that is going to maybe draw down that defense? And being okay with the fact that if she doesn't get there, it's not my fault.
Right.
Right. I'm trying, and ultimately, like, she can be the person who decides to meet me halfway or not. And I'm not a failure if somebody else doesn't just step up to the plate, so to speak.
Right. I mean, it's not your job to convince her that she's insecure and should open up. I mean, that's just so far beyond the scope of what any human would do. Maybe a licensed therapist over the course of many years could address that part, but certainly not your job.
I would probably guess that even a therapist knows that ultimately it's up to, the patient, I would like to think anyway. But I'll tell you, I mean, like, this may be far too much, and you tell me when I'm going into the weeds too much, but my, like, upbringing as a teacher, so to speak, the attitude that was instilled was this, like, whatever it takes. Like, if anything is going on in your classroom, it is your responsibility to fix it, which is good at making you keep working. but also can like make you internalize some stuff that like, hey, I'm going to provide for my students what I can. It is not in my control that there is an abusive stepfather here. Like there's services I can do to make sure there's support, but the student might be bringing things into your classroom. Kids are bringing to the classroom often all the ills of society are present in a classroom, and a teacher is really grappling with all these things. There's issues of poverty, there's issues of abuse, there's issues of alcoholism, there's all these things. And you can be a kind, build connections, show kids that they can learn and grow. But that attitude really was a problematic thing in my brain for me for a long time. And I know it is for a lot of young teachers. You can do what you can do, and you aren't going to fix society's ills with a new teaching strategy. And it's just a hard thing to say, but it's a reality.
There's a lot of strength, I think, in what you're describing, and in being able to let go of the vast parts of it that you cannot control. And presumably, and I want to ask you about this, presumably one reason you got into teaching was to help make the world a better place and help these kids. And you were drawn, around when you and I graduated from college was around Hurricane Katrina. Like it wasn't an accident that you chose New Orleans as a place to go. But it must be very, very difficult to admit the limits of what you can do. And you're right. It's not like, oh, if only I had lesson planned harder on Sunday, his uncle would stop drinking or whatever. Because that's what it would boil down to if you could control it, right?
No, I mean, honestly, it's like I feel strange talking about it and saying out loud that you can't solve every problem, because it is so ingrained into my psyche that that's the attitude as a teacher that you must have. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I think it's still a work in progress, but it's true,
Well, it's got to contribute to the teacher burnout that we're hearing so much about. I mean, we've had teacher shortages for as long as I remember education existing, right? But, and there's a lot of complications, but a lot of teachers are really struggling, during COVID and all that, probably, maybe because of in large part because of what you're describing. Of course, other things too, but.
Mm-hmm. It's wild. I don't know how many of your listeners are educators, but it's a scary thing. Like you want, both for society's sake and any child that you might know in school, you want teachers who know what they're doing and stick in there a little while. And, at a certain point, people are realizing that it is incredibly challenging. They're not getting respected. They're getting challenged because they have some parents who heard something on a certain news station and are accusing you of indoctrinating their children. And at a certain point, I don't begrudge teachers for stepping away and doing what's best for them. I used to feel a little bit of irritation at teachers who like wouldn't return for their second or third year of teaching. Like, how could you do this? We invested so much in you. But I think in reality, I might have been a little upset because I didn't feel that I could step back when I was feeling unhealthy. So we need to actually fix the situation, and it was probably not the right course for me to get mad at the teachers,
Well, it's funny that you say all of this, because one of the other thoughts I'm having as you talk through all of this is, we joked at the very beginning about, we're all over the place, and you and I do. We've moved a lot. We've left cities and come back to cities, and we sort of have that in common. And different sort of and you've done a lot of weaving in and out of sort of having a full-time job at a school or a school district versus going out on your own, which is what you're doing now. And so there's a lot of kind of upheaval, and I made a joke, I think, about inability to commit, but you've been incredibly committed to this. You've done this since the day you graduated college, and you've gone through more crap in terms of American education, drama and difficulty and tragedy and hardship and all of that. And it's a field with a ton of attrition, and you're still here. You're totally committed. So I retract everything I ever said about a lack of commitment. I still have problems, but you, like, what keeps you?
I mean, sometimes I don't feel this way anymore, but I used to feel a little but unmoored. I was very, because my teaching career started in New Orleans. I was there for 5 years, and then I wanted to improve and kind of level up my career in education. And so I moved to New York City and got a master's degree and worked for the university, which is how I did that work in Saudi Arabia that we described earlier. And then I was like, man, I just missed having my home base, and went back to New Orleans. And I currently am starting to do work elsewhere, but it doesn't feel quite the same as I'm jumping around like, okay, I want this now. I want to do this now, and I'm going to leave all this behind. I'm trying to design this in the type of life that I healthily want. And what I want is I want to maintain my connection to New Orleans. I want to be involved in the regrowth and rewilding and education down there. Have an office up here where I basically am doing bi-coastal work with a lot of people that I love and respect. And I'm setting that up now, and it doesn't feel like I'm jumping to a dock that I might not make it to, clinging on. It feels more like I'm okay. What's going to be healthy for me, and what am I going to love? And that's basically how I'm trying to set it up, and that's how it feels now. I'm glad to hear that as a human and also as your sister. That's lovely. And also, just to flag, I've never heard bi-coastal meaning these two coasts, and I love it. No, I like shock. People are like, bi-coastal. I'm like, the Gulf Coast is the coast, my friend.
Yes. No, A+. I'm just going to refer to, from now on going to assume that's the default.
Yeah.
And anytime someone says bi-coastal, I'm like, oh, New Orleans, and then have to explain it to me that it's the other way around. That's amazing.
And look at them like they're silly for not understanding.
Yeah, you're like, sorry, what? Yeah.
New Orleans, what are you talking about?
It's like, no, I mean, what is it? Like, I mean, Paris, Tennessee, of course, or whatever it is.
Rome, Georgia is
right. Right. They have a Coliseum, but it's like a Buffalo Wild Wings with an extra window situation. All right. So, okay, just one more question, because sort of a logistics-y question is, and I know the answer to this, I think, but I actually am now doubting that, is why did you become a teacher in the first place? One of the goals in this podcast is to talk to people who don't necessarily know what they want their steps to be after college. I talk to a lot of college students who say, what should I do? And I say, well, it's impossible to just sit down and think it through. How did you get into being a teacher? Did you grow up with an idea that you might be a teacher? What did that look like?
No. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with full vulnerability here because I don't love my answer.
Okay.
So, I knew that I wanted to be a part of something. And I was, there was a while there where I was like, maybe I'll go into politics. I don't know. Like at the time, as like a 21-year-old, I was like, I don't know. RFK seems to have done some good stuff. And meanwhile, no, not really. Narrator, nah. So I was just like, I guess that means I got to go to law school. But I don't think I'm ready for law school quite yet. And like, I've always, we've got some younger cousins, and I always like loved. And actually, currently love those cousins. Hi, Jamie. Shout out.
Yep, shout out, Jamie. We love you still.
I was just like, I seem to be good with kids. What's this? And it was Teach for America. I saw, so I got recruited for Teach for America. And I was like, okay, this seems like a thing I could just do for 2 years. Which, side note, is like the problem with Teach for America. It's like very, are we going to save education for people who are teaching for only 2 years? No, we're not. But it appealed to me, and I got in there, and it was very, very hard. I studied history as part of my college degree, and I was just like, I was like, high school history, I'd be good at that. I'd love talking about history and learning things about history, and then I'll be off to grad school. But I wound up getting the little kids, and I was disappointed there, and I had to teach every subject, and I never was a reading major. I never was a writing major. I'm not positive that if you had told sixth grade me that he'd be a reading and writing instructor, he would believe you. But I had these moments every day where we had read aloud time, and it was me reading books to kids where they would talk about them. It wasn't too sophisticated what I was doing in terms of teacher moves, but we were talking about books, and it was something. And that wound up for sure being the favorite part of the day for the kids. And then for sure being the favorite part of the day for me. It was like the moment of like, oh, we are connected. Like the behavior issues that I couldn't handle as a first-year teacher were put aside, not because I had some new teacher strategy where I had to make kids sit in a certain way, like a lot of these schools do, unfortunately, but instead it was, wow, the kids don't want to misbehave right now because they're so into this. And they're sharing and talking with each other in ways that I otherwise hadn't seen them sharing and talking with each other. And that was like the core of what snowballed into more and more reading and writing stuff, like the connections kids were making with each other through it. So I started layering on more reading and writing stuff, and I improved my skill set around how to help kids think about new things and how to talk to more people, and how do you get kids to get out of their shell a little bit if they're a little shy, but you know they've got a deep down great idea in there. Or how do you help a kid if like they want to read this book, but that book is like pretty hard and they're not great readers right now. And so I've just kind of like attached stuff to that snowball as it's just gotten bigger. And that's how I've gotten into, hey, I'm a reading and writing specialist and helping kids with connection to stories and each other now.
Well, and you've done a lot of combining your love of history with that reading, right? You often give...
For sure. Yeah.
You're not randomly picking reading.
Things you love all the time. So like if we read novels about historical fiction, like one of the most powerful ways, I alluded to this earlier, if you've got a text that's above the reading level of many of your students, actually like one of the best things you could do for them is support them in that very hard text. Like they benefit tremendously by learning different sentence structures and different vocabulary, and that's how you level up, or one of the ways you can level up as a reader. So one of the things you can do is, if you're reading historical fiction, you can take nonfiction text sets where you arrange texts about something from easy to less easy, and the kids really improve their knowledge and understanding of that topic. And then when they read the book, they're blown away because they're making connections that they might not have otherwise said. So I'll give you a specific example. Like in high school, we had kids read Letter from Birmingham Jail. The governor of Florida is not going to like the story. We're
about to get banned in Florida. So great.
So the kids read the Letter from Birmingham Jail. Written, obviously, Martin Luther King, groundbreaking piece of writing. He wrote it from prison on toilet paper. It's like pretty remarkable. And I was just like, oh, kids' minds are going to be blown by reading this, both because it sounds so beautiful and because of the things he's talking about. And you watch kids' eyes as they would read it, and they were blank stares. They were not reacting or resonating with it very much. It was not resonating with them very much. So we found nonfiction articles that were about some of the things that Martin Luther King mentions in there. So one of the things of many was the greatest stumbling block to progress. I'm butchering this a little bit, but the greatest stumbling block to progress is not the Ku Klux Klan. It's the white moderate telling us to wait for another time.
Oh.
And they had no concept of like what he meant by the white moderate. So we read other articles, like one's called The Perils of Indifference by Elie Wiesel. And it's just all about like how the worst thing you can do is be neutral in the side. And because as you're a neutral person, you're taking the side of the oppressor because it just allows them to keep going. And so they read that the next year when we had used those articles, and kids were lighting up. They had so many more ideas, were so much more interested. And that was just kind of the Rosetta Stone that unlocked that for them. And there's a million different things like that you can do. And that's one of the ways that I embed like, hey, history is amazing. We can explore it through reading and writing.
And then you get the historical knowledge without feeling like you're sitting in a class that's like, we're learning history and this happened and that happened.
Yeah,
it's right.
Like
it's
not
through the narrative.
It's very like, look, read this story of this young woman, who was in Auschwitz and like experienced this through her eyes.
Right.
It is incredible. And that becomes an avenue for kids to explore those topics later on their own. And we also like will set up our own classroom library of like, hey, I know you were just reading a book that was about this. By the way, if you were interested in it, here's where in the classroom you can find more books like that. It's called Building a Textual Lineage for Kids, so they can explore their own pathways of interest. And so it's not I'm shoving these facts down your face.
Right.
Instead, it's like, oh, I noticed you like that. And then they'd like it.
I'm going to really misuse an education term, but it almost feels Montessori-esque, right? In the sense of like following the curiosity of the child. I don't really know anything about Montessori, but I just feel like I know that part.
Yeah, I mean, it is so if this is going to be a blunt oversimplification, but if you think of traditional schooling as a little bit directive and a little bit, you're going to do this because I'm telling you to do this, and here's the formula for this math problem. And you think about Montessori as like, oh, you're interested in taking apart a motorcycle? Have at it. See what you learn. I think kids need both types of teaching where they get chances to explore stuff, and they are told like, hey, by the way, if you're lost, here's what you can do to figure this out. So you both get the like, hey kids, I want to tell you, like, as a reader, here's 3 things you can do that's going to make this go better for you. Try this one out right now. I'm going to come around and help you. It's a little more directive. But after that, kids get the free range to go, okay, I'm interested in exploring that. And hey, kid, that same strategy I just showed you, that works in that book too. Go try it and we'll talk about it. So it is inviting kids to have some ownership over their learning, even though you really are still pulling the strings. I know I've got this unit to get through, and I'm teaching narrative writing, and I'm teaching journalism, and I'm teaching whatever, book clubs. But giving kids just a little bit of ownership, just one, makes them more interested, but also makes them appreciate you a little bit more too, in my experience.
You're a very good teacher, it sounds like.
Thank you.
Very good. I mean, I've known it. And for those listening, I'm going to butcher this, but you did something amazing happen that I was very proud of for you, which was that, or Bayou, that, there's a pun on Bayou in there. All right, focus.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm getting derailed. Which was that your district in New Orleans had the highest increase in grade level reading in the state or in history or something. Like, this is, like, Gerrit's like, this works is what I'm trying to say, is
yes.
Is the point.
This works. And there's various things. So like my, when I was the 5th grade teacher at the first school in New Orleans, like, we test score, like, also I always like hesitate with this because like test scores aren't the end all be all. Like, right. I would want to see the test scores amidst all the other things, student passion, student joy, what are they choosing to study later? But test result wise as well, as a byproduct of the good teaching, kids were improving more. We most recently, I was working with high schools, and the coming back or while being in virtual learning through the pandemic, our students did very well as compared to the rest of the district, but particularly our students with special needs and our English language learners, far outpaced everybody. And it's a combination of things. It's some of the things we've talked about and some other things as well. But yeah, I believe in this stuff fully. So I'm all in.
I feel like I remember you describing having like biked around in the depths of lockdown to like hand out books and workbooks to people. Like, maybe a lot of teachers were doing this, but that's
no bikes, but it was a Herculean effort. By a lot of people who even had to do way more than I did, but we were one, and shout out to the schools for doing this, but setting up hotspots so kids could do online learning. And at first it was, okay, we're going to go print 3,000 packets, because we had nothing. We had no online strategy yet. The pandemic had just happened. It was like, I'm going to drive out to New Orleans East and we have to print 3,000 packets of English stuff and social studies stuff and science stuff, and we're going to.
Now I see why you're replanting so much. You're like, now I see why you're replanting so much. You're like, we had to chop these trees down directly to get these. packets.
I haven't even begun to replace the paper that I've. It caused me to destroy all these trees. But it was quite remarkable seeing. There's stories of this all over, but parents would come and they get free lunches for their kids, and they'd pick up food alongside water, alongside this packet of stuff that kids could take home to still learn stuff, hopefully. Right.
And a lot of these students don't have reliable internet, if internet at all, in their homes.
New Orleans East in particular was pretty rough with it. So I think that's improving a lot now, but yeah, that was a problem to work through for sure.
So I have 3 questions total left for you. I have many, but we'll stick to 3. One question for you is, as I'm listening to this, where I say, wow, you're inspiring all these kids to take ownership in their learning and to get better at reading and then go find more information. What advice do you have to adults out here in the world who maybe they had a good teacher like you and they have a love of reading, or maybe they don't, but we're all kind of on social media and trying to think about like whether to read more about this or click on that Wikipedia article. Like, how do your lessons, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but how do your lessons in the classroom translate to equipping, adults to get more information on their own in a thoughtful way, not in a I did my own research kind of way?
So,
the answer could be it doesn't.
No, it does. It does. Well, I mean, I think part of what keeps me, another component of teaching that I really appreciate is like, there are skills that most adults or a lot of adults aren't walking around with that we get to inoculate kids with a little bit. So there's a bunch of exercises. So one thing is, and I forget the name of the company that I stole this from, but I'll look it up and I'll add it to your show notes if you all. Right. But one of the things that this prompts kids to do, and I just made a point of doing it all the time and showing teachers this move, but it's just like if we're reading an informational piece, like an article, we basically go through and we tick through like, what's this person's main point, but also what's this person's position and what's this person's like pre-orientation of why they might want to make you think such a thing. And just that extra hat of like, okay, so I'm reading an article. Should I take it at face value that the Secretary of, of the Interior is telling me that this is actually a good policy? Or should I think, hey, this person represents an entity that wants this to happen, and I should question that a little bit and dig further? So that kind of thing. And there are way worse examples, like, something from an online zealot. Like, just because you read it and someone says something that sounds like a fact, should you consider it to be true?
Right.
And so we have these like class-wide discussions where kids will, one, analyze like why somebody might be biased in writing something. But then, kids shuffle to one side of the room or the other side of the room based on what their pre-existing opinion might be. And they basically have like an argument battle taking turns back and forth, rebutting each other, and they can change sides or find a nuanced spot in the middle. So they find, here's what I think that is not either the pro-con or the pro-con or the con. We'll edit that better. No, keep it. It's fine. I'm just tired. It's been a long week, but
yes.
Kids find nuance and stuff. Kids examine bias. They find nuance and stuff. We wrote a unit that's basically exploring and examining, dangerous things like algorithms of how like a social media company might see that you're really interested in something and send you more stuff. And that also just works for, I think this thing about global warming that's not true. Here's more fake news about that's going to harden my opinion about it. And I like to think that being aware of those things helps kids a lot in the long run as they become adults.
And especially now to be able to teach that. I mean, I don't remember if we got that when we were growing up, but it wasn't quite so urgent, I don't think, as far as, the information came from like one of two channels on television. And that was sort of, not to be a geriatric millennial, but we had to crank it. Yeah. My algorithms keep pushing rugs. Just rugs, rugs that you can wash in the wash, and you need these, and so it's like
I own those rugs. They have pushed it to me. Maybe
that's why it's a last name thing. All right, so my penultimate question is a game that I just made up called Best Thing Worst Thing. All right, I'm gonna go teaching, rewilding, and I'll say marathon, but as a placeholder for triathlon, extreme, and I want to know the best thing and the worst thing about each of those things. All right, so let's go teaching first. What's the best thing about teaching?
Best thing about teaching is connecting with people who are passionate, be they kids, be they adults.
Worst thing?
Worst thing about teaching is the compromises we have to make because of the way kids are tested. There's I'll elaborate on that just a little bit if you'll permit.
I permit.
There are a million amazing things that we could do with kids. And there's no rule against doing them, so let's start a journalism class or a unit where kids get to do playwriting if they're interested in high school or yada, yada, yada. Schools right now are so beholden to test scores. And it's not even that I hate the test necessarily. It's that the school can get closed if the test scores aren't awesome. And because the school can get closed if the test scores aren't awesome, kids had better be able to rock out that 5-paragraph essay. And therefore, we drill 5-paragraph essay. It's hard to crack open room for other things that are probably equally beneficial to kids. So the worst thing is the pressures that's on a school and the people. And it is, I think, a big component of the burnout that we just talked about. And part of the reason why we don't do some things that we know would make kids love school a lot more.
Right.
So that's the worst.
I feel like they should have innovated on the 5-paragraph essay. It's like, 6?
I use that.
I don't know, like something.
Yeah. There's all kinds of different essays, but point being, like, read these 3 articles and use those 3 articles to make this kind of argumentative writing is how they usually assess kids. And like, honestly, they should be able to do that. I want kids to be able to do that. I just want kids to be able to do lots of things.
Right.
And, it's unfortunate because it's an unfortunate byproduct of wanting to make sure that schools are doing stuff.
Right.
And I get that instinct. We do need to make sure schools are doing stuff, but not at the cost of stopping us from doing other things that could be great.
Right. It sounds like, if you'll permit this probably not quite right analogy, it sounds like it's sort of like we have to teach the kids scales and drill scales on the piano over and over and over and over again, but we never let them play music because we have to nail the scales, even though the scales are
honestly,
important.
I use the scales analogy a lot actually in teaching. Because that's what I'm saying. Like, we need a little bit of both. Like, we need the phonics and the vocabulary and the fundamentals, and that's practicing our scales. We'll do fluency, we'll practice reading, we'll practice sounding good. You also need time to explore and innovate and try out all these things in concert with each other, not just by itself. And that's a favorite comparison of mine in the teaching profession. So
and it goes back to what you said about making it fun, and that being a way to actually be able to keep going on something. All right, best thing, worst thing on the rewilding, planting, all that.
Well, you know what? If I ever went to scale, which I would not, or scaled up, I think I'd find some more challenges. Honestly, right now, best thing is I get to go check on how my plants are doing, and it's kind of just a fun thing to do. And you see them grow, and you get excited about it, and it's very nerdy. But it's great. It's hard. It's very hard. I don't know if you've dug a hole recently, but imagine just doing that all day, because that's what you're doing.
Yes. Nate Bargatze has a bit out about in his new special. Yeah. Have you heard it?
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. I won't ruin it. Go listen to that. Add it to the show notes. And
I think if I had to say worst thing, I think there's so I haven't had this experience too much, but I also volunteer with this organization called Soul, Sustaining Our Urban Landscape, and they do plantings officially, whereas I'm a little more unofficial right now. And they run into things, and I think the biggest thing is just misconceptions about trees and their benefits and costs. So trees are really, if you plant the right ones, a good thing to have if you've got hurricanes and tornadoes, because it can slow things down a little bit. There are the wrong trees that will just break apart, and you'll have tree limbs flying everywhere. But people have a lot of misconceptions. Somebody came up to me and said "Oh, honey, we don't do trees in New Orleans. You can't have that around a storm." And I was like, "That's the opposite of true, actually."
Right.
So I think it's just there's a lot of misconceptions. There's oddly some anti-tree sentiments out there. I don't get it.
That's complicated. All right. Outrage has gone too far. It already was too far. But it's we're hating on trees.
How is this controversial? Yeah.
Then move to the moon. There's no trees on the moon. How about that? All right. Marathons, triathlons, all that stuff. Best thing, worst thing.
Oh, okay. So I'll brainstorm the triathlon thing. I think so. Best thing is you get something to look forward to, and you just get I don't know, just the freedom that you get by going really fast on a bike and feeling the effects of oh, I feel that I'm faster today than I was a week ago. That's probably the most fun. Or maybe, and this is the perhaps the mean-spirited side of me, the like somebody passes you and gives you a weird look and then you pass them later.
Yeah.
Like, that's a moment I live for, I'm afraid to say.
Circle of trust.
Forget anything sophisticated or polite I said today. Just remember.
Yeah, I will crush you.
It's fun. I think like the hardest thing for me has been like learning nutrition stuff, because I used to do like sprint triathlons, like, or Olympic distance, which takes 2 hours, an hour and a half maybe. But I did an Ironman, and knowing how to give your body the nutrients it needs to do this, sometimes you're just like, oh my God, am I exhausted? I can't tell if I'm overhydrated and it's affecting me, or if I'm dehydrated and it's affecting me. I can't tell if I ate too much or too little. I just like something's off, and it's something nutrition-wise.
Wow.
And that has been a thing to learn. And as I get better at it, that, starts to go away. But there were moments of like, screw this, I'm not doing this.
Right. Like something's wrong and I don't even know which way to go.
Yeah, I feel terrible right now. Yeah. But if you're working out on something for 6 hours, that's gonna be tiring. So
right. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that one. All right, my final question for you is: what is the ideal state of being for Gerrit? Like, what are you excited about going forward? What are you looking forward to? Say we have a conversation a year from now. What's your life like in its ideal form? Easy.
So, I think I would just like to be doing what I'm doing, but feel settled in it a little bit more. So a year ago, I was working for that school district as director of literacy, and I was there for 5 years. And I'm dabbling back into the consulting part of things where I'm going around. And it's absolutely worth it, but it's a lot of like front end work to set up these things, So I am going bi-coastal, as we said, and I'm looking at a place in New York City to help me with, not living in a hotel. But right now, I am spending 3 weeks in a hotel. So I'm hoping that when you see me a year from now, I'm doing all these things that I'm doing, but I am doing it in a way that feels sustainable and means that I'm happy, my pets are happy, and I'm able to regularly see friends and people I love and care about.
That sounds pretty good to me. And shout out to Tula, Bugs, and Tormund, your dog and 2 cats. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Add them to the show notes. There's photos. Yeah. I'll send you a million photos. They're everywhere.
You find it. Yeah.
A million photos. But that for those who are listening only, as opposed to watching, Gerrit is in a very beige room right now. Like it's like the most beige I've ever seen. Like I'm becoming beige just looking at it.
Surrounded by beige.
It's so beige. I didn't know
shirt
beige
even feels kind of beigey. Oh no,
it's all very beige.
What have I done? Yeah.
You need to go wear a red shirt just to.
Yeah,
just
I'm gonna find a rainbow. I don't know where. I'm finding it. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you later. All right, Gerrit. Thank you for talking with us. I've talked to you for. I've forced you to talk to me for a very long time after a very long week, so thank you for that.
And you do it. That was great. It was fun.
And where can people find you on the internet? We'll throw it in the show notes, but anything special?
So if you're interested in my tree planting extravaganza, you can go to Gray to Green, New Orleans. If you're interested in following my adventures in the classroom, it's just literacy space PD. That stands for professional development. I can't believe that handle was not taken, by the way.
That's amazing. Yeah.
My personal one is Gerrit a la carte.
That's new, isn't it?
You're just dabbling. Yeah, I realized my old one didn't make sense to a lot of people and actually led to some confusion.
Got it. We won't say the old one then. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell so it was Baby Moon Man, and it's off of a sketch that a friend of mine was a part of the night I got Instagram like 12 years ago. But that was before the advent of the baby moon, like the vacation people go on before they give birth.
God.
So people were like, hey, can you arrange a blah, blah, blah? And I was like, what? Like accountants and spouses of accountants were just like, hey, I'm trying to set up a getaway to Hawaii.
I love that your reply, because it's the only reasonable reply is just what, like, as opposed to like, yeah, I guess. I love like you accidentally just end up planning baby moons. I never would have thought of that. That's amazing.
You needed to hand it. Hey, I happen to love Waikiki, you know?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we can all contact you. That's amazing. So Gerrit a la carte.
Yeah.
Wait, because you're dabbling in lots of little things. See, that's
because I'm
perfect.
dabbling. Because I'm majoring in everything.
I can't believe you even questioned whether you're appropriate for this show. My God. All right. Perfect. Well, then. And Tula is on Instagram. That's very important.
Oh, yeah. Tula Catahoula.
Yeah, the dog. All right.
Toula. Named after the town Ponchatoula, which is where they found her and her mom. So Ponchatoula is how I got Tula. So
right.
Tula Catahoula.
Right. Lovely, lovely dog. All right.
Man, my favorite. All right.
All right. Thank you, Gerrit. I will probably send you a stupid meme relatively soon.
Oh, great.
Yeah, right.
Make sure it's dog related, please.
It will be. Yeah. All right.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Bye. And that's our show. Thank you so much for joining us for season 2 of Majoring in Everything. We're very excited to bring you all the amazing guests we've got for you this season. Don't forget to keep majoring in everything yourself. And Eric, did I do it? Is this a good second outro? See you next time.